still lag behind their pre-pandemic trends. Indicative evidence points to shortages in energy and food supplies, further to supply chain disruption with severe operational and financial consequences for member countries. As we embark into the 2022 ISDB Group Evaluation Symposium, the event brings together a wide range of development practitioners sharing their individual experiences and unique perspectives, including MDBs, peer development institutions, academia, and centers of excellence to reshape evaluation work and to chart a roadmap that facilitates progress towards sustainable recovery and realignment with the SDGs. It is important to state that evaluations and their findings can only be useful if all stakeholders are involved throughout the entire process. Monitoring and evaluation are critical to establishing a strong global evidence base for assessing the wide, diverse range of interventions being implemented. Importantly, monitoring and evaluation form the basis of strengthening the understanding around the many multi-layered factors underlying the effectiveness of the response at the community, national, and international levels. At the global level, it is an important tool to identifying and documenting successful programs and approaches and tracking programs toward common indicators across related projects. Today, each of us has access to substantive mass of information, be it from self or independent evaluation functions. This information needs to be streamlined and utilized to create knowledge that can be made available at our fingertips. In light of these considerations, we are gathered today for this important symposium to avail knowledge and learnings from a wide spectrum of actors with the aim to illustrate how evidence-based decisions can enhance effectiveness, leverage lessons learned in formulating impactful responses to future crises. Moving forward, some positive consequences and new trends materialized from the pandemic, such as the massive spread of online learning, the pivotal role of vaccines, the innovative delivery systems of medical supplies through drones. All these remarkable efforts to cope with the pandemic have extended an invitation to reshape evaluation in a post-COVID-19 world. To enable this reshaping, policymakers must be capable of devising and acting upon innovative measures while engaging a wide range of stakeholders. Moreover, it is crucial that the capacity of policymakers and other pertinent stakeholders is developed as monitoring and evaluation systems are being reformed to ensure greater resilience and sustainability. In conclusion, I would like to thank His Excellency Dr. Muhammad Al-Jasser for his continued support and leadership, our co-organizers, the evaluation community at large, and our audience here today. Thank you all for your courteous attention. And with this, I declare the symposium open, and I wish all of you fruitful deliberations. Thank you. Over to you, Zakaria.
Thank you very much, Brother Zaher. Now I'd like to direct your attention to a video that we prepared on the highlights showcasing the evaluation year at a glance. Brother Ishraq, kindly proceed.
The year 2021 was an exceptional year for evaluation. Here are some of its highlights. January 2021. OED disseminated key lessons learned and recommendations related to project procurement practices from the evaluation reports ranging from 2015 to 2019. OED also published 10 evaluation lessons from past global vaccine rollout programs. February 2021. OED released a synthesis report on evaluations of IsDB interventions in water supply and sanitation sector. Dissemination webinar and launch of the synthesis report of IsDB interventions in the water supply and sanitation was held with active participation of 4 member countries executing agencies. March 2021. The first ever real-time evaluation of the IsDB Group Strategic Preparedness and Response Program for the COVID-19 pandemic was conducted. April 2021. Launch of the Global Evaluation Initiative in the MENA region under the theme Evidence and the Road to 2030 took place with OED's support. May 2021. OED contributed to the 2021 UK Commonwealth Learning Week on the theme Translating Learning to Transformational Change in the Commonwealth. June 2021. OED helped launch the evaluation criteria in Arabic language to promote development effectiveness in the Arab world. OED supported the implementation of the first ever evaluation training program offered in the Arabic language. OED also organized 2 webinars during the 2021 G-Local Evaluation Week, focused on evaluation capacity development and strengthening M&E systems in the MENA region. July 2021. Launch of the OED's revamped knowledge portal, Learn, to promote knowledge sharing. August 2021. OED contributed to the 2021 Asian Evaluation Week under the theme Transformational Evaluation, Moving from Uncertainties to Resilience. The department also conducted the special evaluation of the Deep Wells and Construction of Schools project in Somalia, funded by KAAP. September 2021. OED contributed to the launch of Taequim training program in Arabic language in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia in collaboration with Al Athar Impact Center. October 2021. OED published its flagship annual evaluation report. OED participated in the first Global Evaluation Initiative Implementation Committee meeting. OED disseminated lessons learned from IsDB's private sector evaluation. November 2021. OED contributed to the Regional Conference on Impact Evaluation in Francophone Africa. Closer collaboration established with Saudi-based institutions, Saudi Fund for Development. December 2021. OED built on its successful partnership with the Global Evaluation Initiative Implementation Committee. OED published an insight paper on IsDB's regional integration intervention. OED also responded to unprecedented management requests for inputs from the function and conducted several special evaluations and reviews, including Special Evaluation of Al Farida Residential Community Project, Saudi Arabia. Special Review of Delayed Projects in IsDB's Sovereign Portfolio. Review of the bank's strategies and operational performance during the past 5 years. Special Review of 2021 IsDB Group Annual Meeting. Special Review of the performance of the STI Fund. Special Review of the performance of the Scholarship Program. And Special Review of the performance of the Community Outreach Program. OED discussed the roadmap ahead of the year 2022. What an eventful year!
What an eventful year indeed it has been. As promised, brothers and sisters, in the introduction, this event is very focused, crisp, and to the point. Now, allow me to introduce our moderator for the opening session, Brother Hamdi Ahmadu. Brother Hamdi is the Senior Manager for Monitoring and Evaluation with the ITFC. In his capacity, he leads ITFC's self-evaluation function, which includes reporting on and managing development results framework and conducting ex-post evaluations of ITFC-funded operations. Prior to joining ITFC, Brother Hamdi had a wealth of experiences with the Independent Office of Evaluation of IFAD and the Office of Evaluation of the FAO in Rome. Brother Hamdi, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Zakaria. Assalamu alaikum to everyone, and welcome to this session titled "The Role of M&E Functions under IsDB's new strategic direction. I'm really honored to moderate this opening session, and I would like to seize this opportunity to express my gratitude to the organizing team of the Evaluation Symposium, including the technical teams who have been working tirelessly over the past weeks so that we can meet today. You are doing a wonderful job for knowledge sharing, and thank you very much. This session's topic is of particular importance. Nowadays, we live in a world where major external shocks are becoming the norm, whether they are environmental related, health related, or political related. These external shocks have increased in terms of frequency and intensity. We are now operating in a new normal, and for development agencies like the Islamic Development Bank, we need to be resilient, prepared, and responsive to meet the evolving needs of our member countries. Just 2 months ago, and after a thorough internal consultation process, the Strategy 2025 document was endorsed by the board and sets a new pathway for the bank to support its member countries towards a green, resilient, and inclusive recovery. Now, as we move towards the implementation phase, how do we ensure that decisions are guided by evidence and lessons learned in order to maximize results and impact? And what are the emerging challenges associated with monitoring and evaluation? And how do we adapt to the new normal? How do we manage for results throughout a disrupted and changing environment? These are some of the questions that we will seek to address with our distinguished panelists. But without further ado, and to set the stage, I would like to ask you for your undivided attention as we present a video of address from His Excellency, the President, Dr. Mohammed Jasser, President of Islamic Development Bank. Thank you. Brother Ishraq, you can proceed.
Distinguished guests, esteemed speakers and panelists, brothers and sisters. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I am delighted to speak at the 2022 Islamic Development Bank Group Evaluation Symposium, Reshaping Evaluation Through the Lens of Recovery. On behalf of the Islamic Development Bank, I would like to thank the organizers, the Operations Evaluation Department, and the respective monitoring and evaluation functions from the ISDB Group entities. I would also like to thank our partners attending this special gathering, including keynote speakers from our peer multilateral development banks, King Salman Relief Center, Saudi Fund for Development, CLEAR, and academia. Building upon the Islamic Development Bank Group's swift response to our member countries' unprecedented challenges resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic, it has become evident that leveraging partnerships is a crucial enabler of effectiveness, efficiency, and sustainability. Therefore, working closely with other development partners through effective partnerships will require closer harmonization and coherence to devise sustainable solutions moving beyond emergency response. Distinguished guests, the evaluation role has been instrumental in tackling the COVID-19 and realigning the Islamic Development Bank strategy to make it relevant in the post-COVID era. Last year, the bank relied on evidence from independent evaluations to enhance its COVID-19 operations and sharpen its strategy. For example, the real-time evaluation of the bank's Strategic Preparedness and Response Program, SPRP, and the review of the bank's performance over the past 5 years led to highly relevant recommendations for the realignment of the bank's direction for 2023-2025. Furthermore, I requested our independent evaluation function to undertake an evaluability assessment of the bank's realigned strategy for 2023-2025 to ensure its consistency with the best standards and the measurability of its key performance indicators. Distinguished guests, sisters, and brothers, post-COVID-19 has underlined the need to forge partnerships and raise the urgency for collaboration through constant communication and transparency towards win-win outcomes, focusing on problem solving and adapting innovative solutions. This symposium focuses on the role of evaluation in sharing knowledge, practices, lessons learned, relevant experiences, and innovations that promote evaluation thinking and attain development effectiveness. It brings together various stakeholders from across the development spectrum to emphasize the apparent shift in the dialogue on the role organizations can play in making the world a better, more sustainable place. Distinguished guests, sisters, and brothers, in the development arena, it is not enough to have noble intentions. It is widely known to development practitioners that global development is dynamic and often unpredictable. Therefore, organizations working for development must be highly committed to learning and be adaptive and innovative to sustain and grow. That's why we need to step up efforts to improve the development effectiveness of the Islamic Development Bank projects and programs. Therefore, securing greater cooperation and synergy with our development partners and pooling more resources and smarter solutions are essential to edge closer to achieving the SDGs. Moreover, achieving impact through local interventions is necessary to drive transitions required to boost recovery, tackle poverty, build resilience, and enable green economic growth in member states. Distinguished guests, sisters, and brothers, allow me to reiterate that the Islamic Development Bank looks forward to working with its development partners to overcome the challenges the world is facing today. On that note, I would like to conclude by wishing you a very successful meeting and fruitful deliberations. Thank you. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
We're grateful to His Excellency for his continued support and leadership. I think his speech sets perfectly the stage for the discussion. His Excellency clearly stated that noble intentions are not enough in the development arena and underlined the importance of learning, being adaptive and innovative. He also called for partnerships as well as cooperation and synergy with our development partners. And I have no doubt that all these aspects will trigger some interesting discussion among our panelists. And let me introduce you to our distinguished panelists, actually. I know they know each other very well and probably do not need to be introduced to an audience which is predominantly from the Islamic Development Bank. Yet, allow me just to give you a brief introduction of these panelists. So for our external colleagues joining us to this session. Brother Anas Aisami is the Acting Director General, Country Programs with the Islamic Development Bank. He joined the bank 15 years ago, and since then he has held several high-level positions, both in operations and evaluation, including Director of the Operations Policy and Services Department and Director of Operations Evaluation Departments. Brother Anas, it is really a pleasure and privilege to have you with us today. Brother Amer Bukvic is the Acting Director General for Global Practices and Partnerships. In his capacity, he leads the bank's products, organization, and strategic direction in the areas of partnerships, public and private financing, and knowledge products. Thank you very much, Brother Amer, for being with us, despite your time constraints. We really appreciate. Farhan Rashid is the Director of the Budget Performance Management and Results Department. So he has been very active over the last years in enhancing the bank's results monitoring and reporting, and is a strong advocate of the harmonization of the MDB's internal reporting practices to improve development effectiveness. And last but not least, Zahar Rabai is the independent evaluator. He's leading the operations evaluation department. Before moving to OED, he managed the capacity development department and the leadership and staff development division, and served as an advisor to the vice president, cooperation and capacity development of the IDB. He has a long career in development, and before joining IDB, he also worked with them in different managerial capacities with CARE USA in Atlanta. So thank you very much for being with us. I would like to open the floor with a question to Brother Anas. I think the presidents gave us a hint about the new strategy. I would like you to give us more details about the new strategic direction, what it means for ISDB and for member countries.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Thank you very much, Brother Hamdi Ahmedou, and thank you also for OED for having me today. Excellencies, partners from the sister MDBs, fellow colleagues from the evaluation functions, staff from the Islamic Development Bank Group, and ladies and gentlemen. The operationalization of the new strategy will translate into key activities that the bank will do certainly differently under the new strategy in the next 3 years. The bank will make member countries' national development plans and priorities as a starting point in developing the MCPS. What we call the MCPS are the member country partnership strategies. The bank will scale up its financing for acceleration of the development. The bank will achieve selectivity, focus, quality, and result delivery approach in development financing. The bank will harness business synergy among 5 group members. It will ensure organizational efficiency and effectiveness in business delivery. The bank will establish highest governance standards. And last but not least, the bank will foster a virtuous organizational value and culture. This, in a nutshell, sums up the blueprint for operationalization of the new strategy that will essentially be the focus of self-evaluation and independent review in the coming 3 years. If you allow, just I'm going to give my today's remarks in 3 parts. And in first, I'm going to talk about the importance of self-evaluation within the context of the bank's recent efforts to fight the COVID-19 pandemic, which has been cited by His Excellency the President. Second, I will focus on what the country program directorate under the leadership of His Excellency the Vice President Operation has undertaken in the last 1 year to ensure we continuously respond to the priorities outlined by the senior management in line with the new strategy of the bank. And I will conclude by speaking about how the mainstreaming of our in-house operations monitoring and tracking toolkit is going to facilitate the implementation of the new strategy of the bank. I will try also not to be redundant of what Brother Farhan will say today as well. On the first part, self-evaluation provides critical tools to support real-time sharing of lessons on what is working, what is not working, and why. The case study in point is the Bank's Strategic Preparedness and Response Program, the SPRP, to fight COVID-19 pandemic that hit our member countries with varying intensity. While responding to the crisis presented as an unprecedented challenge to most government and the private sector, the depth of impact on health, on the economy, and on citizens were enormous. The IDB, through the SPRP, supported the member countries, and in doing so, adopted several periodic self-evaluations and assessments. Chief among them is the preparation and submission of regular self-evaluation reports to the ODEC, to the Committee of the Board of Executive Directors, and we have benefited a lot also from our partners here the GPs and BPRD itself. Furthermore, a real-time evaluation, the RTE of SPRP, was also conducted by the Operations Evaluation Department independently to draw lessons from the implementation of SPRP, and the bank's response to the pandemic was accordingly course-corrected by the operations complex. Besides the example just given on SPRP, the country programs directorate has been at the forefront of undertaking self-evaluation to ensure the directorate is continuously improving and remains on track in achieving key operational objectives. In this context, I'm going to talk about one major strategic action that was undertaken by the country program directorate based on self-assessment and reflections in relation to the recent realignment of the bank's strategy. One major implication of the bank new strategic alignment is the requirement for the bank's operation pipeline to be Paris aligned, and the country programs directorate therefore immediately course corrected and ensured that the recently concluded programming exercise considered the requirement and this aspect of the Paris alignment. And I am proud to note here that based on the outcome of the recently concluded programming exercise, currently over 90% of the operations pipeline is Paris aligned. I would like to highlight that without the various self-evaluation tools that we developed in-house, we would not have been able to adequately address the various operational and implementation challenges faced by the country programs directorate and deliver the targets as assigned by the senior management in a quick manner. In this regards, today I'm going to talk about 3 monitoring and tracking tools very quickly that are aiding the operations teams on the ground in achieving the operational targets and in supporting the member countries to achieve their key development priorities. The first one is the quarterly pipeline and work programming review tool. And this tool is utilized in order to proactively replenish the operations pipeline with the new strategic priorities of the bank. And the operations pipeline is assessed by the directorate in terms of availability of multiple critical aspects and by other support units of the bank on which we apply the different prioritization dynamics of alignment to the new strategy of the bank, the Paris alignment, the sectoral focus, the regional focus, relevance to the SDGs, etc. And through this exercise, the operations pipeline has been increased 8-fold by the end of last year, and more recently by an additional 50% in the first quarterly programming exercise this year. The second tool is what we call the road to the Board of Executive Directors. The number of projects to be approved by the Honorable BD exceeds 50. I mean, this is not counting the projects that under His Excellency President approval. Therefore, it is important to ensure adequate planning upfront to ensure issues do not arise, or at least to minimize them. Like, for example, the benching of projects in one single BD meeting, the regional or sectoral concentration, etc. And this allows, of course, us continuously and proactively shepherd the project preparation process to address potential bottlenecks early and expeditiously while ensuring no compromise on project quality and readiness. I'm happy to note also that with this tool particularly, we ensured the successful achievement of the operations work program of last year, which was very challenging. The third, last one, of the most important tools is about the delayed project reporting toolkit. The effective management of the delayed project is among the key focus areas of the senior management of the bank, and in this regard, we have developed an in-house traffic light dashboard to provide early warnings on each of the specific indicators that contribute to the projects being classified under delayed portfolio. And the dashboard is currently being used to monitor and track the progress of the active projects portfolio and to provide full visibility to the senior management. Besides these 3 tools, the country program directorate benefits from the insights and observations of the bank's independent self-evaluation functions undertaken by the Budget, Performance and Result Management Department, BPRD. And BPRD undertakes a periodic assessment of the progress made on the key operational metrics and, more importantly, the development results from ongoing and completed operations that forms the basis for immediate to medium-term actions that are regularly initiated at the directorate level. Let me conclude by stating that besides strategic partnership and stronger cooperation and integration, the adoption of self-evaluation tools and results management systems are crucial for the bank. In particular, the successful implementation of the strategy depends on continuous alignment of the bank's operations, financial and human resources capacities with the member countries' evolving needs. Such as an evolving and dynamic alignment is not at all possible unless the self-evaluation function of the operations complex, BPRD's results-based management functions, and the OED's independent evaluation function work in tandem and in synergy with each other. Therefore, there is a pressing need for all of us to become more proactive and adaptable in order to truly instill a culture of continuous improvement in the bank. The country program directorates and the leadership of His Excellency the Vice President Operations stands ready to work together with all the key stakeholders to achieve the results outlined for the bank under the new strategy, and thus support the member countries in achieving the national development priorities and the targets under the Sustainable Development Goals. And I thank you for your audience.
Thank you, Brother Anas. I think you gave us a lot of food for thought. It's quite impressive to see all these monitoring and evaluation tools and initiatives being implemented at the core of the strategy, to strengthen development effectiveness. And I think your conclusion also provide us with a transition towards our next speaker. You mentioned strategic partnerships, which are one of the other major enabler if you want to implement the strategy, the new strategy. And for that, I would like to turn to Brother Amer. I mean, to implement the strategy, we need enablers, and partnerships are one of the most important of them. What can we learn from previous experiences in leveraging partnerships, and what is the role of partnerships in mobilizing resources under this new strategy?
Hello, do you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Yeah. Thank you, Brother Hamdi, and I would like to extend my greetings to all the present guests and our colleagues from the East First of Islamic Development Bank, and also other MDBs who are attending the event today. So I will make reflections on the past, as you mentioned, past learnings and new directions for partnership, resource mobilization, and global practice under the new strategy of the bank. Development needs of our member countries, ISDB member countries, are enormous. And we at ISDB rely on strong partnerships, both financial and technical, to address the member countries' development needs more effectively, especially in light of the recovery from the pandemic, rising instances of vulnerability, and the macroeconomic and food security caused by the recent Russian-Ukraine crisis, which are moving the borders of our common understanding of how the developmental work exists. The bank seeks to deepen and broaden its engagement with development partners, both private and public, in coordination with ISDB group entities and departments. The Global Practice and Partnerships Directorate team acts as a focal point for major strategic development partners who are the MDBs, the Arab Coordination Group, international financial institutions, UN specialized agencies such as IFAD, philanthropic organizations, the Organization for Islamic Cooperation, OIC, specialized and affiliated institutions on matters related to cooperation, coordination, and co-financing for the development of our member countries. As the topic assigned today, we will mostly focus on my reflections on the work of the GPP partnerships and resource mobilization. Separately, our sector and thematic departments are also at the forefront of leading the bank's shifts and focus towards the green, sustainable, and inclusive infrastructure and comprehensive human development that captures the cross-cutting needs of women, youth, climate change, and capacity development. The cooperation and co-financing arrangements with our partners focuses on strategic priorities in common member countries, mainly on infrastructure, climate change, education, water, sanitation, urban development, agriculture and transportation sector, food security, reverse linkages, and others. The bank signed envelopes with major partners such as African Development Bank, Asian Development Bank, EBRD, for co-financing. The utilization of these envelopes is being accelerated for the purpose of speedier recovery following the COVID-19 pandemic, with very strong performance of our His Excellency VP Operations, Dr. Mansour Mukhtar, and also the team led by our acting Director General, Brother Enes Sami. The benefiting countries through this accelerated speedy recovery interventions were Mozambique, Mauritania, Turkey, Chad, Morocco, Uganda, Jordan, Senegal, Guinea-Bissau, Indonesia, Mali, Bangladesh, and Maldives. Consultation with partners is picking up pace, with main purpose to collectively progress in implementation of the joint action plans and confirm priorities for the years ahead, based on added value and clear development impact through our joint work. That would allow to secure broader and more impactful participation. In order to increase our resource mobilization efforts, we intend to widen the donor base and increase the predictability of resources, devise new resource mobilization products, leverage resources and results through partnerships, and of course, communicating our impact with facts and figures. While dealing with resource mobilization, it is important to have a holistic approach and not limit ourselves to financial resources. Our member countries have accumulated a wealth of knowledge and expertise across a wide spectrum of sectors and thematic areas that can be mobilized to serve our member countries and also Muslim communities in non-member countries. Through our homegrown South-South cooperation modality known as reverse linkage, the bank is tapping on these technical resources for the benefit of member countries, and we should continue to scale up such an approach that help us to get access to diverse know-how and expertise in order to develop the capacities in our member countries and Muslim communities in non-member countries. As a tool for mobilizing financial resources for helping MCs in educational sector, ISD partnership with Global Partnership for Education entity reached a concrete outcome with launching of a Smart Education, Smart Ed in December 2021 in coordination with the Arab Coordination Group. In beginning of COVID-19 pandemic, the bank reached an agreement on templates for the bank's member countries on provision of delivery of output, procurement of supplies and related services through key UN agencies that include UNDP, UNICEF, UNOPS, WHO, WFP under ISDB finance projects. Currently, these 5 UN agencies are assisting the bank in implementation of over 20 projects. These delivery arrangements proved very useful during the COVID-19 pandemic period, especially in countries with no ISDB presence. Throughout COVID-19 pandemic, banks' engagement with United Nations Office for Project Services, UNOPS, proved positive in supporting health system in member countries. Many member countries have benefited from these partnerships like Maldives, Cameroon, Benin, Chad, Guinea, Mozambique, and Senegal. These efforts help countries in tackling the source of COVID-19. ISDB participates in World Economic Forum annual meeting in Davos in May and United Nations General Assembly. WEF, World Economic Forum, provides throughout the year a platform for ISDB staff to engage in communities of practices such as digitalization, restyling and education, environment, chief economies, fragility, and others. This year at Davos in May, Bank expects to sign an MOUs that include joint action plan with following partners: World Health Organization, International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, United Nations High Commission for Refugees, United Nations on Trade and Development, International Labour Organization. In the next years, we seek stronger emphasis on co-financing as the quantum of lending of the bank will increase, as well as developing more cooperation agreements with top international partner institutions related to environment, climate change, fragility, resilience, and in development cooperation. We have introduced a new initiative for developing MOUs, which is the Data Management Platform. The Data Management Platform is being developed using business-friendly software on bank's SharePoint site to enable the user to create, edit, and update data in the database format for all related information on ISDB MOUs or cooperation agreements. We expect the MOU Data Management Platform to be useful to all staff, and especially those who are located in the field level. We also have to explore possibilities of cooperation with private sector, especially when it comes to ICT. Pandemic has taught us the importance of being connected. We always look for ways to improve and stand ready to receive your advice on how to strengthen partnership and resource mobilization activities. Thank you for your attention. And I would just like to note the organizer that I may need to leave a bit earlier because I am a panel speaker on the conference that is physical and I need to attend very soon. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Brother Amr, and we fully understand your commitments, and thank you very much actually for being with us despite your time constraints. I think your answer really, or your presentation really complemented well the presentation given by Brother Anas. I think it gives us a comprehensive overview of where we are headed and how we want to get there. I mean, with a strong focus on self-evaluation and development effectiveness and solid partnerships for added value and development impact. And I think that's where it gets interesting. And we want to know how all that translates into a corporate results measurement framework. And for that question, I would like to invite Brother Farhan. Brother Farhan, one of the essential features, obviously, of the strategy is to ensure that it is implementable and evaluable. This will not only allow the bank to set targets and expectations, but also ensure that they can be monitored, reflected, and updated. So what are the main features of the new results-based management framework of IDB? How does it align with the updated strategic priorities and the SDGs? Just before giving you the floor, I just would like to mention that this is an interactive session. We welcome the questions from the audience under the Q&A chat box, and we will address all of them to the extent of what is possible. Thank you. Brother Farhan, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Brother Hamdi, and Assalamu alaikum, everyone. And first of all, thank you very much for providing me with the opportunity to share my views on this very important topic on the role of M&E functions and how the RBMF, the results-based management framework, fits in this whole picture of the new strategic alignment. So if you allow me, I'll cover three main areas in my remarks. I would like to first of all, talk about the global perspective in the context of the post-COVID-19 world, the role of PMDBs, and finally talk about the linkages of these two dimensions with the bank strategy, the M&E functions, and its impact on the development effectiveness. And when we zoom out a little bit, it is very important to understand the global context because that's where all of us have a very direct relationship with the externalities and how that is going to affect our own delivery model. And if you take a step back and when we talk about the SDGs 2030 agenda, and the slogan was leaving no one behind. And it is more than just a slogan because it was about providing a fair chance to everyone to have the same opportunities in an equitable manner. And all the SDGs such as the poverty alleviation, the zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality and reduced inequalities are all basic rights of all human beings reflected in the SDGs. Achieving the SDGs 2030 agenda was challenging on its own. It was further intensified by the pandemic. However, the road to recovery, unfortunately, is disproportionate in different regions, sectors, and segments of the societies, and in so many different ways that it has actually widened the inequalities even more. So just to give an example, when we talk about the digital divide, the vaccine divide, the job losses for the low wage versus high wage workers, or more skilled workforce versus the less skilled workforce, between female job losses versus the male job losses. These are all skewed towards the segments of the societies that needed the social protection the most. So clearly the prevailing infrastructure, institutions, and the systems are not very well designed or are not resilient enough to tackle these shocks. The COVID-19 pandemic has triggered one of the worst job crises since the Great Depression, and there is a serious risk that the crisis will increase poverty and widen these inequalities even more. And the impact could be felt for years to come, and the road to recovery could take a lot longer than expected. So the donor organizations, the governments, and the international development organizations have a mutual responsibility to have an effective and efficient operating and delivery model. The global economy enters 2022 in a weaker position than previously expected. And the rising energy prices, the supply disruptions, fiscal deficit, and soaring public debt have resulted in higher and more broad-based inflation than anticipated. So this will have a further adverse impact on the member countries due to the poor social infrastructure and weak human capital. However, maximizing the member countries' interventions in a more effective, efficient, and sustainable manner is even more critical than ever. And the need to have stronger M&E functions, hence are of paramount importance. So these are the global challenges, and based on that, the strategy realignment exercise was very much mindful of that. But I also wanted to touch base on some of the systemic issues and some of the issues which are beyond the control of the MDB itself, but it is the general development arena and the development landscape related challenges that are also part and parcel of the overall development effectiveness. And just wanted to raise a point that since 1945, the number of MDBs that has increased at a linear rate, with approximately one new MDB is being created every 3 years. So what is going wrong that despite the abundance and creation of all these
I think we have lost Brother Barham. Can you hear me? I mean, is the issue with me or was it?
No, exactly. I think it's his connection. I think he's connected from the bank, and it has been up and down lately.
Okay, let us see if we can get in the next seconds. Otherwise, we can move on. Okay, I think we will get him back for sure. Maybe I think I would just move on to Brother Zahir. I mean, who is the independent evaluator? I think who can give us some perspective about some of the insights that were that have been already provided, and also more importantly, Brother Zahir, we would like to hear from you and about the efforts of OED on feeding the new strategic orientation with insights and evidence from evaluations.
Yeah, thank you very much. Can you hear me all well?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Hamdi, for the question. In fact, the Operations Evaluation Department supported the bank in various ways to realign its strategic direction. First and foremost, OED led what we know as the review of the bank's performance during the past 5 years. By past 5 years, we are talking about 2017 to 2021. We know that that strategy evaluation is an important milestone in the strategy management process because it closes the strategy cycle, and it is as important as the formulation of the strategy itself. That is why we called on evaluation to come and evaluate or conduct a mid-term evaluation of the 10-year strategy of the bank in order to prepare the 10-year strategy. The objective is to shed the light on what worked well and what did not work well, and judge the validity of some of the strategic choices and tools used to implement the strategy. And of course, all of that was aiming to serve as input for the new strategic planning. So based on the guidance and the received from the governors roundtable, the steering team of that was overseeing the formulation of this realigned strategy immediately, as I said, in its first meeting, sought the help of OED to conduct this midterm assessment. And in line with this, the OED facilitated a reflective, high-level review that engaged a large number of in-house resources and developed an array of recommendations that provided avenues for the strategy update, particularly in relation to some areas such as the approach to country programming, fund management, the use of the global country platform, STI programs, etc. So these recommendations really help to shape the way forward and to take informed decisions on the strategic direction of the bank. Another important contribution of OED is the evaluability assessment, and I think it was mentioned in His Excellency the President opening statement when he said, I ordered to conduct an evaluability assessment, which is a systematic process to determine the extent to which the expected results of the strategy are verifiable in a reliable and in a credible way. And we know that the old adage says, what gets measured gets done. So any strategy that is more evaluable is more likely to be successful. And as such, the evaluability assessment provides an early indicator of the likely success or potential problems. So the OED evaluability assessment of the strategy looked at a number of criteria that are important to the evaluability of the strategy, such as the quality and design of the results framework, the risks and mitigation measures, the implementation readiness, the monitoring arrangement, and the ownership and the partnership. And the assessment pointed some shortcomings and helped the strategy team to improve the implementation approach of the strategy. And in relation to this, we also provided at the OED input into the theory of change of the strategy and reviewed the IsDB, the strategy results framework. A major lesson from the review that we conducted on the 5-year performance, but also emerged strongly from the real-time evaluation of the COVID response of the bank, which was conducted by OED in 2021, is that aggressive targets not commensurate with the institutional capacity and resources can be counterproductive. Yes, to establish stretch targets, but they should be grounded in reality and should not be perceived as impossible by the staff. Otherwise, it may lead to frustration. And For example, to give example, the 1-5-10 target of the P5P, which is basically mobilizing and investing $1 trillion annually in 5 industries in 57 member countries to create 10 million jobs, was over ambitious. Another example is the 6-month disbursement ratio of the SPRP, the COVID response of the bank, which also was an overkill. ISDB, for example, met only 35% of this initial target at the end of the year. So having a results framework that is robust but realistic and complete is so crucial for the success of the strategy, because it can serve as a tool to mobilize the different actors. So these are some of the ways how OED has contributed to inform the strategy update. It also shows how the independent evaluation function in general can play a significant role and can influence the strategic direction of the institution. That's either by providing evidence-based recommendations or by peer reviewing the strategy documents and advising on strengths and gaps and feeding back lessons learned and knowledge gained from experience. Of course, we look also forward to playing a significant role as independent evaluation in the strategy implementation, and of course, after the completion of the implementation of the strategy, because that's core to our mandate as a post-evaluation department. I may come to that later. Thank you, Hamdi. I hope I addressed your question.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Actually, very well, very well. I mean, thank you for your informative answer. I will just give back the floor to Brother Farhan, who we interrupted. I think he was telling us about the learnings from the pandemic, how it has affected the M&E systems. Eventually, can you please build on that and tell us quickly how your department is addressing these challenges associated with the M&E and caused by the pandemic and other external shocks?
Yeah, no, great. Thank you very much. And apologies for this Wi-Fi connection. And I think I lost you at the point I was trying to zoom in from the global perspective down to the level of the MDBs. And the reason I wanted to do that was that when we're part of a bigger ecosystem, in our case, this is the MDB landscape that we're talking about, we do have common symptoms and common issues, that could sometimes be within the domain of the bank, and sometimes they are beyond the control of the bank and they're part of the wider or bigger problem that we face. Hence, it's very important to be mindful of these challenges and have a very clear understanding of how these things could be controlled within the domain of the bank. And I'll link that with the last comment of Brother Zahir Rubai when he was talking about the stretched and ambitious targets, and he gave the example of 1-5-10 precisely. So having a very clear and well-rounded and grounded understanding of the practicalities of the domain within the bank as well as the externalities is extremely critical. So here I just wanted to touch base, because this is a symposium, we encourage having a dialogue and discussion with everyone, that the number of MDBs since 1945 has increased at a linear rate, which is very interesting. So with approximately 1 new MDB is created every 3 years. So that's quite interesting. I found it quite interesting when I was reading this. And despite this growth in the MDBs, the development challenges are not really coming down. They still remain in place. And then some of the issues are relating to the fact that most of the financing has been channeled more on the project financing side of the things rather than strengthening the core systemic issues, the improvement in the capacities and the systems at the country level. Which makes the core objective of the development effectiveness perspective very and more challenging. And we keep on talking about the results framework of the bank, of the institutions, but at the same time, sometimes we lose sight of the other side of the story, which is the challenges at the country level and challenges beyond the scope of one single MDB. So something which should be considered when we formulate any results-based management framework or any strategic exercise. So the third part is now zooming in about the organizational matters. And here I'm just going to talk about the strategy realignment exercise of IDB itself. I think what we have done a very good job is that we have tried to have this pull system-based strategy, which means that we have got in touch with the member countries, the Board of Governors Roundtable, and hence whatever their requirements requirements and needs of the member countries were. That has been reflected in the strategy realignment exercise, which is very critical in terms of having the right sense of ownership from the member countries. So as a result of that, the integrated work program was formulated for 2022 with the help of the operations colleagues and the DGCP in particular, in terms of formulating the work program, which is 70% of the work program is aligned towards the first pillar, which is the green, sustainable and resilient infrastructure. And 30% of the work program was aligned towards the inclusive human capital development aspect, which is the second strategic pillar. Hence, we can clearly establish that the sense of direction, even though the strategy realignment exercise was not completed at that stage, but we had a very clear direction in front of us that these are the two main pillars that we want to ensure that the work program is aligned with. Similarly, the strategic pillars and the three strategic objectives of boosting recovery, tackling poverty and building resilience and driving green economic growth have been well captured in the strategy realignment exercise, as well as the integrated work program for the next year. In particular, now talking about the M&E functions, I just wanted to share with you in a more candid fashion that the M&E functions in a more conventional or classical way have clear demarcations, boundaries or categorization. So we can say that here we have the role of Department A, and when it finishes, it goes to Department B, and then Department B finishes, and now Department C comes in. Hence, as long as you look at the M&E functions in this fragmented fashion, the risk is that it will always have inherent inadequacies, and hence this is where the fault lines could be created. The suggestion is that if you think of the M&E functions that are well embedded and encapsulated within the delivery chain or process flow of the end-to-end delivery model, then the attrition in the processes can be reduced, and hence this will reduce the inefficiencies. We need to look at the M&E functions as a part and parcel of the delivery model in an integrated and closed loop manner. Core operations functions such as the VP operations, the DGCP and the DGGPs, and all the fiduciary and technical functions have to work jointly in a collaborative manner to instill a formal M&E function within the delivery model of the process. The success of a well-oiled M&E is based on how smoothly the information loops back in the system in terms of the lessons learned in its programming, planning, project designing, preparation, and implementation. And when we talk about the results-based management framework, we're very pleased that BPRD has worked with all the colleagues across the organization, particularly in the operations, formulating the results-based management framework. And the RBMF has been developed that will allow the bank to have a forward-looking plan, which could be used as a roadmap during the implementation and completion phases, clearly identifying the roles and responsibilities of operations and support functions, yet in an integrated manner, and improve the results and development effectiveness. One of the findings of the evaluation reports that indicated that having a well-defined programmatic approach with clearly defined priority areas with specific indicators and clear targets improves the development effectiveness. Hence, no M&E function could be successfully achieving its objective if there is no results framework. One of the things that we introduced in the formulation of the results framework was having this inclusiveness in terms of, particularly in terms of setting the targets. We encouraged a bottom-up approach where the functions were asked to come up with the baselines, understanding what was the actual achievement of a target, whether it's at level 1, level 2, level 3, or level 4. And then against that, the targets were proposed for the next 3 years. So it has been a quite inclusive exercise by focusing on the actual achievement and the track record of history and how we can complement that or build on that, in the next 3 years. We have also ensured that indicators have benefited from the results frameworks of other MDBs, as well as the evaluability study of the draft strategy carried out by OED, which was extremely important for us to understand the do's and the don'ts and how we can ensure that we don't fall in the trap of making the same mistakes that was indicated by the OED study. Now, in terms of having the systems and the tools, having formal digital tools, dashboards, effective communication, and a strong collaborative approach lies at the heart of the monitoring and evaluation of BPRD in terms of ensuring that the RBMF stays on track. And we have, well-defined and well-structured tools that we have been using in the last few years. Just to give you some examples, once we formulate the indicators and the targets, there are formal portfolio and KPIs monitoring and reporting dashboards. We rely on producing data-driven, evidence-based, empirical evidence-based quarterly management information reports that are quite detailed and quite comprehensive in its tone and its, the critique dimension that we bring in, but in a more positive and progressive manner. We have also ensured that the operations processes are continuously reviewed, and we work very closely with the colleagues in the operations management team in the DG front office and colleagues at DFU. And this is something that is happening all along the year. And we have paid a lot of attention in the last few years on building the capacities of the staff by having regular awareness webinars and similar sessions to ensure that the knowledge is disseminated in terms of having a three-pronged approach, which is to have dashboards, produce reports, and physically engage with our colleagues at the front end of the business. Thank you very much. That's all from my side. I hope I haven't taken a lot of your time.
No,
thank you.
Very insightful, very insightful. We'll probably get back to you. We have more questions coming from the Q&A, and then I'd like to give them enough time. Maybe just 2 or 3 more questions very quickly. If you can have more concise answers, please. I would like to go back to Brother Anas, and I think both of you, Zahar and Farhan, I think you highlighted very much the importance of this feedback loop. I mean, the importance of integrating lessons learned into decision making. I mean, Brother Anas maybe can give us an interesting perspective. Obviously, he's a former evaluator and now heading operations. From his perspective, I mean, how do you, Brother Anas, how do you strengthen or promote evidence-based decision making now that you are in operations, and how can we better integrate lessons learned into the operations design?
Thank you very much, Hamdi. This is an important question, and beyond the systemic, of course, measures that we have, there is a lot, of course, to do in this field. I mean, when you talk about lessons, we find them from the self-evaluation itself on one side, and from the independent evaluation, and also from the unwritten, of course, lessons from the team itself that is designing the new projects. The systemic measures is about, of course, imposing that under the appraisal exercise at the design phase, there is a section that is mandatory about lessons learned, which captures all what we have learned in the same sector, what we have learned in the same context, and what we have learned in the same implementation that is similar to the project under the design. But beyond that, of course, from a section that is mandatory in our reports to apply the lessons, there is a lot to do, of course. But the implementation itself, when it is under scrutiny, through follow-up, always, of course, when any operation is stuck, then, of course, there is a war room for that, from the front office on one hand, and with the support units, all the support units of the bank. And then we call for what we have learned. I mean, and all the precedent of the solutions, I mean, that we have put in place to those efforts. I can give a lot of examples, but whenever, of course, we have a kind of jurisprudence on a case that is not even captured by the policy sometimes, but whenever we apply a solution, that solution should be kept. I mean, for similar cases, I mean, right away to apply and not to spend a lot of time on it. I can go.
No, I think that
longer,
was, you were really to the point, and it's very, very, very insightful, very good. Just going back to Brother Farhan, I think you mentioned something very interesting at one point. You didn't elaborate on it. You say that there are challenges at country level that are important, and when someone speaks or talks about M&E, two challenges often comes up with this, or often lack of resources and poor capacities at country level. How do you address these types of challenges?
Yes, I think the most important aspect here is to really convey to the country the expectations and the responsibilities from the countryside. And what happens is that at the project planning stage, when we're preparing the project, most of the CRIs or the logical framework and results framework is very much geared towards the institution. So here sometimes my observation is that the communication should be very clear and perhaps again maybe a bit ambitious at this stage, but the results-based framework for all the MDBs should have some KPIs for the member countries as well. And that will very clearly, describe that the expectations from the member countries and their limitations and how far you can go. If the executing agency is not, on top of it, what they should be doing. Hence, there are limitations which can actually exert more pressure on the institution. So it's not a one-way road. And that is where I think sometimes at the time of engagement, it could be at the time of the member country partnership strategy at the most strategic level. But down to the project level, I think at that point, your startup workshops are very important when you're formulating the results framework, when you're formulating the feasibility reports. I feel that sometimes it is not emphasized enough that there is a certain role that has to be played by the member countries. And hence, that stays throughout the journey of the completion of the project life cycle for the next, 5 to 8 years. So having a systematic approach and having clear communication, I think it's very important. This could be one of the innovative ideas of how the development banking generally tries to manage the expectations of the member countries by having a joint ownership, which would be the way forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Farhan. Now maybe a last question before obviously opening the door for Q&A to Brother Zahir. Listening to all what have been said, from our distinguished panelists, what are your expectations, what are the expectations from the results-based management systems and independent evaluation function in terms of learning for learning and accountability?
Yeah, thank you very much, Hamdi. In fact, the expectations are very high from the, am I muted?
You are not.
Okay, so I said expectations are really very high from the independent evaluation. And this is, in fact, in line with what we have been observing. In fact, the last 3 years, we have witnessed a surge in demand for evaluation in the bank. And earlier in the video, we saw that just in 2021, the evaluation function was requested to conduct 9 special evaluations and reviews on the top of its approved work program. So this increase in demand for evaluation products shows the bank is recognizing the value of the evaluation, and also it shows that the evaluation culture is spreading within the institution. Now, the span of the realigned strategy is very short. It's only 3 years. So this underlines further the critical role of the monitoring and evaluation. The time is of essence, and any adjustments we are making should be opportune in order not to miss the target. Farhan was earlier making the case for the need to have a good and robust and practical, realistic results framework. So this result orientation of the strategy further emphasizes the role of M&E to assess and report the achievement of results during and post-evaluation. So when you talk about M&E, I'm talking about self-evaluation, but also the post-evaluation, which are complementary. So that is why OED contemplates to remain ready to respond swiftly to any call for special reviews, particularly of those key strategic areas where ISDB is facing challenges. Now, few things that we can help with during the implementation of the strategy, but also post implementation of the strategy. So similar to the review that ISDB, that OED has conducted, which is the review of the ISDB performance during the last 5 years, OED should also facilitate a participatory midterm review of the aligned strategy during the mid-year of 2024 in order to probe the early signs of progress made by the bank toward the achievement of the strategic objectives of its agenda, and provide timely feedback that can serve as catalyst for mid-course adjustments during the second half of the strategy period. So this is very important. Also, this kind of mid-reviews, which are formative in nature, are still not really common in the bank, and we have not conducted so many of them. And they are not part of the culture of the bank. So, and especially at the corporate and the strategic levels, even though we do them more often on the operational level. Also, in relation to this, I would like to open a parenthesis and discuss the role of independent evaluation in validating the work of self-evaluation during the implementation of the strategy. We know that per the bank policy, all projects are self-evaluated with what we call PCRs, the project completion reports, and we, at the independent evaluation side, we validate 100% of these PCRs. PCRs are essentially self-reflection tools that provide evidence from the lenses of the project team. Though occasionally we engage external consultants to bring some fresh perspective, but they are essentially the lens or the perspective of the project team. PCRs are definitely useful to learn from, and they are very useful to improve future projects, but they have little impact on the evaluated project itself. On the other hand, we have the PIASRs, the Project Implementation Assessment and Support Reports, which are undertaken during the implementation of the projects, and we think they are equally important and perhaps more important than the post-mortem PCRs, because even though they may not offer mature lessons because of the incomplete experience, nevertheless, they help to track the progress toward the targets and allow for midterm adjustments and corrections before it becomes too late, like in the case of the PCRs. So in addition of being useful, these PISRs are also more read by the stakeholders. That is why, as a food for thought, and I am floating this idea to my colleagues here for further debate, is that OED and operations may consider validating a percentage of these reports instead of focusing only on the PCRs, especially that the contribution of the independent evaluation is marginal, since it is really based on desk review only. This is also true for the CPPRs, the country portfolio performance reviews. But of course, in the event evaluation moves away from or focuses on other products, midterm products, then that should be a move from this systematic validations to selective validations in order to use the resources more efficiently. I see that the independent evaluation can play a key role in advocating the results-based management and in building the capacity of internal and external stakeholders, project teams, operations staff, partners, in line with what Farhan was earlier mentioning. Also, it can help to devise the RBM tools, the approaches, the systems. We can also scale up our efforts to disseminate and feedback the relevant lessons through various means and mechanisms. In this connection, the OED will have to continue the update of the Learn platform, which was launched last year, and particularly promote its use among the staff, because having a depository of lessons learned that is not tapped, it does not serve the purpose. All these ideas actually attempt to bridge this gap between the monitoring and evaluation, because all these activities happen during the implementation of the strategy. However, of course, as I mentioned earlier, OED core mandate and primary focus is post-evaluation. So OED also ought to play its central role in this respect as well.
Thank you.
Yes.
Your brother there. Thank you. If you allow, just for time also, I would like to open the floor for the questions from the audience. So thank you very much for your insightful answer. It was very comprehensive. We have a few questions we would like to address. From our colleagues. And maybe one of them, the first of them, I think it's to you, Brother Zahir. You know how much, COVID has caused disruptions and has also called the evaluators to adapt their methods. And there is a question about real-time evaluations. I understand that an RT was conducted by the OED to evaluate, to assess the response to COVID, to the bank response to the COVID-19. Question is, do you foresee greater use of real-time data to identify priorities, tackle emerging food security and health crisis in member countries?
Yes, thank you. In fact, I was just mentioning this, and I said that we really need to promote this midterm reviews, which is basically real-time evaluations in essence. So definitely we will have to conduct more and more real-time evaluations. We conducted the first real-time evaluations for COVID. Normally real-time evaluations, and often they are used in crisis mode to evaluate emergency responses, but special evaluations that happen during the mid-course of any intervention are very useful. And I was making the case that we need to do more real-time evaluations rather than waiting for the post-mortem evaluation, which will have little impact on the evaluated intervention itself, because it serves the purpose of improving future interventions and programs, but very little as the follow-up. Sometimes it can be very costly or late. So definitely we do look forward to that, and I think that's something we highlighted. And also we will, one of the important things we need to ensure at OED is that our thematic and sectorial evaluations that will be undertaken as part of our work program in the next period should be relevant to the realigned strategy and should provide useful information for its implementation. Food security, climate change and adaptation, digitization, multimodal transport, vaccine production, all these issues that are, or themes that are prominent in the strategy, we have to prioritize them in our work programs. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Brother Zahir. A second question, maybe I will give it to Brother Farhan. Brother Farhan, the strategy exercise, it's very, the theory of change, it's very important to define the assumptions and the risks. And there's one question which is about, to what extent does the new strategy factor contingency planning and risk management in tailoring interventions for member countries?
Yes, thank you very much, Brother Hamdi. A very interesting question. And when we are devising the theory of change, first of all, we have to be very clear that it's a very, it can be a very complicated process because of the various drivers that actually drive the causal nature of the cause and effect relationship throughout the critical pathway. So that's why, to be honest, in most of the cases, not all the MDBs use the theory of change when formulating the results-based framework. However, there are 2 or 3 of them that actually use it. So we also went down that path, and this was also one of the recommendations. Hence, we have established a theory of change at a pillar level. So for each pillar, we will take it down all the way from level 1 to level 4. And of course, there are assumptions along the way, keeping in mind that your normal time period for each critical pathway could be anything, from 5 to 8 years. Within that time span, a lot of dynamics can change, your global scenarios can change, macroeconomic challenges can come in, inflation, and so on and so forth. So in theory, this is definitely there. But you have to be very clear that what are your underlying assumptions at a given point in time. So like in March 2022, when we established the results framework, we have clearly articulated and laid out the assumptions that were in place when we formulated the results framework. This could be both internal assumptions as well as external assumptions, okay? And then I will link it back to the point that Brother Zahir mentioned, that periodic review of your results framework is extremely important. You can't just formulate a results-based framework for the next 3 years. and then forget about that and keep on reporting on the actuals against a framework which was devised 3 years ago. So I think having an honest and realistic review, what we have proposed in our results framework is to have an annual review at the time of your integrated work programming exercise. You can take a step back, you can see how the things have evolved, how the things have changed, and then based on that you can reflect that and take a corrective action during the planning phase. So that's why it's a combination that at the start of the formulation of your results framework, you have to lay out the assumptions very clearly, and then a periodic review, or at least on an annual basis, would allow you to take a corrective measure and adjust some of the targets.
Thank you, Brother Farhan. That's very clear. Third question to Brother Anas. I mean, I think we all agree on the importance of digitization. We would like to know, I mean, what places does it have in the new strategy? How does the new bank strategy bridge the gaps in terms of digital divide in the member countries? And do we have concrete examples of initiatives being led by the bank?
Thank you very much. I mean, I have not been actually involved in the corporate project on digitization, but I can, of course, here emphasize the importance of it internally. Because, for example, if you take many support unit work, like the corporate procurement, for example, I am not very in favor of digitization of the project procurement, externally with the member countries, because we know some benchmarks that are not successful. But internally, the processes of the procurement division, the operations procurement division is okay. The corporate procurement is important. The support units, of course, the work, worth, of course, I mean, to have it aligned with the good practices and to help in boosting our efficiency. Now, the level of the country is, of course, I mean, there are some aspects that are more relevant to us as CP Directorate. I can, of course, give here as example the implementation, the follow-up on the implementation, and how digitization would improve, of course, our timely intervention, I mean, to avoid issues and to provide solutions, and also to make sure that the financial progress versus the physical progress is matching, and to make sure that we are delivering, because of course all the criteria, as you know, you can assess them during implementation as well, including even the sustainability itself, because you would assess the likelihood of the sustainability. But all other three criteria, the effectiveness, the efficiency, and the fact that you stay relevant, are of course to be monitored during the implementation. And digitization, of course, would allow not only just like the classical way, I mean, to have response time that is not in a timely manner. We could, of course, allow for making decision timely.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Brother Anas. A question to Brother Farhan. I think it's more about harmonization among MDBs, and I think Brother Farhan is in favor of more harmonization and synergy between MDB's results framework and metrics. There's a question which says, to avoid redundancy, as most member countries work with all MDBs, how does IsDB strategy and M&E efforts align with other MDBs towards leveraging all available resources to member countries?
Yes, great. Thank you very much. You see, this is, I'll be honest, this is one of the areas in which, and that's why I brought in the MDBs dimension in my remarks, that unfortunately what is happening, or sometimes what happens, is that due to the abundance of the MDBs operating in the same regions, in the same countries, in the same sectors, sometimes the approach could be a bit more I wouldn't say competitive, but less collaborative than the way it should be. And hence, the only way you can have a formal process to overcome this particular issue is to engage more and more on the co-financing side of the thing. So this is where the national development plan should be formulated in partnership with the MDBs. And this is where you can have at a project level identification of co-financiers that will ensure that there are greater synergies. And now at a project level, apart from one or two MDBs, all the other MDBs report the results at a project level. So they don't report it at a component level of the co-financer. Hence, this can be achieved, but the only tool you can achieve that is by ensuring that there are greater amount of efforts made towards having co-financing. And just to give an indication that, like in the case of IDB, we are proposing to have a ratio of 1 to 1.5 in order to encourage and have more co-financing options at a project level. We hope that at the MDBs level, all the MDBs have similar targets that will ensure that there are greater synergies in terms of how they want to report on that. Now, like PFM has this policy where they're suggesting to have a harmonized auditor. So for instead of having separate auditor for each component of the project, there should be one auditor, and perhaps the costs could be shared, and of course the results could be shared based on that. Hence, this is a very good operating model, but there is a need to have a greater consensus and a strategic dialogue among the MDBs through formal channels such as the MDBs forums to ensure that these things are practically converted into the work programming exercise.
Thank you, Brother Farhan. And I think Brother Ern also from his perspective may also add something on that area.
Thank you very much, Hamdi. Maybe I would add something on the harmonization aspect, just to complement what Farhan said. On the harmonization among the MDBs, if you take independent evaluation on one hand, they have an apex body of all the MDBs that is called the Evaluation Cooperation Group, and which is doing harmonization among the independent evaluation functions in the MDBs. On the side of the self-evaluation, we do have another apex body which gathers all the MDBs as well on the self-evaluation, which is called MFDR, Management for Development Result. OED, on one hand, is attending the ECG, and BPRD is attending the MFDR. Another thing is that, of course, internally, in every MDB, we do harmonization between, or we have been doing harmonization between the independent evaluation and the self-evaluation, which was done very early also in IDB to ensure the alignment and the harmonization of the outlines between the PCR, the question tackled in the PCR, and the questions tackled in the evaluation reports, ex post evaluation reports. And by the way, the two apex bodies, ECG and MFDR, they met once in Manila, I think a few years back. And of course, discussion on harmonization is there. So external harmonization to have one big book, and internal harmonization, of course, to have the same, the same templates within, of course, each one of the institution between self and independent evaluation.
No, very, very interesting, Brother Anas. We have only a few minutes left, and I think we have a couple of questions, maybe to Brother Zahir, maybe always on the field of harmonization and synergy. There's a question saying that there are many of the projects financed by IsDB are co-financed by other MDBs. In such cases, do we have any practice of joint evaluations?
Yes, we do. In fact, we are planning joint evaluations with different MDBs every year as we go through the work program. We try to identify the projects that are co-financed by other institutions, and we reach out to them and seek their readiness to conduct the joint evaluations. This year already, we have two projects, one with the Saudi Fund and the other one with Badea. Yes, and we are trying actually to increase this practice with other MDBs because when we evaluate any project through various lenses, definitely the learning will complement each other and will have a more comprehensive view of the experience itself. Thank you.
Very good. One last question for you, Brother Zahir. I think knowledge management and learning systems are very important. Have you eventually conducted an assessment or a review of how IDB manage its knowledge and eventually what were the main lessons learned?
Well, not really. Not that I know of that we conducted any systematic evaluation of the knowledge function or the knowledge management processes in the bank. It might be a good candidate for the future, for future evaluations. But definitely, I can understand the background of this question, because even us at evaluation, we are challenged when it comes to dissemination of our knowledge. We generate knowledge, but making sure that it is reaching the right people and it is tapped also, it's quite of a challenge for us. So I think it's a good suggestion that we have to further study and see how we can contribute to answering this question and resolving the challenges revolving around this topic of knowledge management. Thank you.
Thank you, Zahir. And to conclude, I mean, this session, I'll have one last question to Brother Anas. Brother Anas, you have in your first remarks, I mean, presented us the wealth of initiatives, mechanisms, tools that we have in the bank for development effectiveness. Are you planning to further strengthen them in the near future?
You mean the same, or to have further, I mean, more initiatives?
Yeah, eventually more. I mean, the question is about, are you satisfied with the actual, or are you planning eventually to further?
In the position I hold, once you are satisfied, you should quit. You have to always, of course, see, it's not about pessimism, but you have to fill the gaps, and you have to see the other way around. I mean, when we talk about the half full and half empty, my role here is to see and to focus on the half empty. And I can tell you that we have just started, and we have a big mountains, I mean, to climb.
Thank you very much. I think that answers the question. And now I understand we have no more questions from the Q&A. So, or maybe one last. Sorry. Well, I think I'm a bit lost with the questions, but I understand that I think anyway with time constraints, I think we just have to close the sessions. We have only three minutes left, so we'll definitely try to address in written the remaining questions, if any, and just would like to thank our distinguished panelists, Brother Anas, Brother Amr, Brother Farhan, Brother Zahir, for their insights and for the quality of the discussion today. I hope you all enjoyed it. I think you have all underlined and emphasized the importance of M&E, which is really at the center of sound governance arrangements. They are necessary. M&E is necessary for the achievement of an evidence-based policymaking, for budget decisions, for management, accountability, and the use of evidence-based decision-making can only improve performance and is essential if you want to expand and deepen IsDB's impact in support of the member countries. The pandemic has changed the way we do business, but I also understand that it offers a one-time opportunity for institutional learning and development. We have to seize it. We have to strengthen the results management system. We have to innovate in data collection methods and tools, and to ensure that decisions are guided by evidence. So with this, I would like to close the session and give back the floor to Brother Zakaria. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Brother Hamdi, and to our distinguished panelists. If I could just call in Brother Ishraq, for a group photo. So I would ask you to please smile, or smize as they say these days, smile with your eyes and hold it for a few seconds while we take a group photo to document this session. Thank you. Everybody switch on your cameras, please. Wonderful. Great. So in conclusion, I would like to remind our audiences, first, thank you for joining us this morning for the launch of the symposium. And I would like to remind you that we have 2 additional sessions for the rest of the day today. The first one will be with the Center for Learning on Evaluation and Results, Anglophone Africa. It will be under the theme of using evaluation to strengthen COVID and post-COVID recovery efforts. A fantastic lineup of panelists there as well. And then at the end of the day, by 4:30 p.m. Jeddah time, we have the 3rd session of the day, which is by the Global Environment Facility Independent Evaluation Office, under the theme of approaches and methods to climate change and environmental evaluations. So that one is at 4:30. So thank you so much for joining us today, and we will see you in the next session, inshallah. Thank you all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you.
Thank you.